Alright, question 301. What is the defect? Please explain what the defect, if any, with about with the percentage of power loss for the following long piston cylinder 18 by 24 to 135 pounds of steam. 55-inch driving the wheel piston just clear for the front of the 1/64th of an inch clearing for the other inch of the same makes of a 5/8 of an inch of the inch divided. The engine does not give the satisfaction of the trouble that cannot be located anywhere with except the long piston. If the effects leave the pulling power, please advise. Answer. If the engine was still on the surface of the clear lanes should be the 10 but the ones but they are not sufficient to allow the keeping of the main rod taking up the wear of the brasses. There's danger of the knocking out the front cylinder. We presume that this engine originally had a 5/16 of an inch clearance at each end of the cylinder. Clearance of the front end will reduce the amount of the increase the length of the main rod by driving the key. The being of the case we have the 1/64th of an inch of the front end and 39/64th of the inch for the back end. Neglecting the space between the circumference of the cylinder with the valve of the space valve face we would have the bottom clearance of the front end of about 4 cubic inches, clearance the volume of the back of about end of about 134 cubic inches. If the position of the eccentric of the relationship of the pin is not changed, therefore leading the valve would be the same as cutting off the seam of the valve at 5 inches of the stroke. When the piston has moved 35 inches, the move from the end of the travel, we would volume the seam of the front of the cylinder equal to 1.27654 1276.5 cubic inches the force of the piston back with the expansive force of the back of the cylinder. We would move the volume steam equal to 1402.5 cubic inches, pushing the piston ahead, which would give the higher meaning effective pressure for the main of the back of the end and the front end of the cylinder. The increase of the volume of the steam combined with the cylinder with the valve flow for the emission port with the maybe cup with the exhaust at the back of the end of the cylinder. The sound heavy would have the clearance divided each end of the cylinder. Take the dome cover the throttle with the valve open, but then enough to emit the steam to a dry pipe sufficient quantity to develop the required power to the cylinder. The throttle valve should lift 1/4 inch of each of the inch of the diameter to get the full opening. Question 302. Engine that does not steam. Will you kindly give me more advice for the benefit of the experience on the following? The engine came from the new last August with the brick arch. Up to some times ago, they did the first rate. She has not been doing so well lately, having reported to work as follows. New brick arches bored out of flues, cleaned out of nozzles, etc. She had been steaming pretty well before this work was done, but tore the fire all to pieces, especially being clean, knocking it through the pan. Had no new brick to put in it, so it took the remains out of one out entirely. They found the nozzle coated with about 1/4 inch thick. 1/4 inch and cleaned that out. Now that she does not steam nearly so well, burns all the coal you can pile on. Should the diaphragm be altered with or so higher or lower? Answer. Engine out of the shop for 6 months. There should be good conditions of running with the locality with air, good water, but providing the fluid of the firebox do not leak with the boilers, free with the mud and scale. You have the same amount of the heating surplus with the valve of the cylinder packing tight of the engine taut to do work. Although the brick arch is considered as an aid to combustion, the engine could be made to steam without one. Usually necessary to lower the diaphragm to about 3 inches of the arc to remove the vibe with the front end, but properly adjust with the steam with one, leaving the diaphragm to increase the draft and fore end of the firebox through the lower fuse, raise it and increase the draft of the back of the firebox through the upper flue for the change of it until they get the fire into the burner or eventually evenly grade with the suggest for the exhaust pipe with examine the exertion, certain if it is not choked up below with the tip of the thereby reducing the air with the exhaust pipe with the width of the even the draft that you have the tear holes in the fire. See the sack is in the line with the nozzle. The gasket between the exhaust pipe and the cylinder salad is not cracked up and blown out with the exhaust from the air with the pump. The directed sack with the knot against the pipe with the smoke arc destroying the vacuum of the front pipe and the fire burns with the dull red and having the steam pipe with the examined leak to go right after you will make the steam. This is question 303. Working full stroke and cutback. All the other things will be being equal with sufficient boiler capacity to furnish the required amount of steam. Could the locomotive such as in run out of the fast train today, such as in run on the fast train today, make it as fast time working steam the full stroke of the piston as will it cut back if it will cut back, and if no, explain why. With sufficient steam supplied with the working locomotive, the full stroke general opinion of the engine would not be run as fast as if cut back by the steam used expansively regulating the cost, meaning the requirements of the server of the locomotive design will be unable to get rid of the steam fast enough. Preventing the back pressure for the engine would be choked with the steam. The back pressure increased the meaning of the effective pressure would be diminished and result of the loss of the power. Question 304, weight of the driver to tractive effort. Under the term of the weight of the driver, does mean only the weight of the driver that resolves in connection with the figuring the traffic effort. Does not why in figuring the traffic effort do you take only one side of the engine instead of the both cylinders? Answer. The adhesion of the locomotive and the friction between the driver and the wheels rails depends on the weight of the pressure of the surface of the contact. Therefore, the weight of the driver is mean the weight of the driver the loading rests on the point of the contact with the rail. The weight of the driver is usually limited with the engineer department depending on the weight of the rail, the condition of the roadbed, with the rings of the bridges. If the weight of the driver is not including the place with the limit of the engine would harp down the track of the increase the cost of the maintenance of the roadway bridges with the pair with the drivers will weigh with the 6,000 to 9,000 pounds. As they added the adhesion that should be figured with the point of the contact with the rail. The use of the dynamometer car is most accurate method of obtaining the drawbar pull with the tractor after the locomotive. The car is especially fitted with the drawbar connected with the calibrated springs that indicate the number of the pounds pulled in the drawbar. And the answer for the similar question we found, the tractor power with the 22,674 pounds with the 18 by 26 inch engine with 60 inch wheel with 190 pounds boiler pressure. If you desire to obtain the tractor effort by figuring these pistons, both sides of the engine following the formula should be instead, but they would have given the nearly the same result. To make the example clear, we also give the figure that are in one position, which is 254.44696 square inches of the pressure for the cylinders, which is 161.5 pounds, times twice the length of the stroke, which is 4.33 remainder 3 times 2, both the position, both sides of the engine, divided the circumference of the wheel with the equal attractive power with 22.686, with the slight difference with what is either accurately enough for the general application for the cylinder method is shorter, therefore must be used in calculation and weight with the driver known if the 1/4 of the weight is usually taken with attractive power, and above would exact if in the above would expect the weight of the driver to be about 91,000 pounds. Should we desire to figure out the tractive power of the two-cylinder, both the piston method would use the following formula: area of the one piston in the case of the 254.4696 square inches, time pressure of the cylinder, which is about 161.5 pounds, times twice the length of the stroke, which is 4.333 times 2, but both sides divided with the circumference of the wheel of 15.7 of the we have the following equation. Alright, question 305. Stress for the cylinder head studs. Suppose we have to tighten the 12 nuts with the 13 cylinder head with the wheel until we have the instance of the 1,500 pounds of stress on each of the studs holding the cylinder head with the cylinder. Then we admit the steam of the cylinder amount to 200 pounds per square inch. Then is there an additional stress on the studs? Answer. In this case, they would have the 12 times the 150 pounds, but it would equal the stress of the 1,800 pounds of the strain holding the head of the cylinder. There are in 13 cylinders of the 132.73 inches with 100 pound pressure, which is equal 13.273 pounds, or 4.727 pounds less than the pressure of the sub of the head. By dividing 18,000 pounds of the air of the cylinder of the inches, we find the pressure of the steam side would have to exceed 135.7 pounds per square inch before there would additional strains on the studs. Question 306. Broken frame of the right lead engine. Please state the reason for so many right locomotive frames breaking the right lead engines. Alright, answer. We do not say the engines are equipped with a double the single front of the rail for the engine frame. There's many of we cover the poor design wells of material welded water in the cylinders. The right with the side of the engine for the always pound hard with the right side of the left, right side than the left. Because of the right crank with the pin passes the forward center with the left center is pulling forward. This helps the right cylinder pushing the right box back and against the jaw of the pedestal. Same result with the curves of the back center of the left side. This usually covers the more right with the frame of the braking of the left, the right hand, left head, led engines. By having the left engine lead, the trouble would only be transferred to one side to the other. One master mechanic reduced the number of the broken frames, keeping the thimble bolts of the tightened wedge of the setup of the class of the engines that were giving them trouble, and try it. Question 307. Piston valve operation. How would you give the opening of the piston valve when the engine happens with not having any bypass valve? One could only take it off the seat of the valve that we have the rear engine with the point that she is not any bypass valves. The spool of the piston valve is smaller than the steam chest, pushing the edge of the ring with taking the valve edge. When the edge is equipped with you state that there would be no way we could recommend it other than taking off the bolt valve of the chamber lead with the use of the strip of the pores pulling valve in either direction of the edge of the ring will come up against the stripping of the tin port, and however it is usually custom to tap of the valve chamber, the opposite with the steam port, with the edge of the ring being and seam with the, even with the edge of the steam port, with the cylinder plugged in the end of the peephole, similar to the plugs of the cylinder of the indicator of the connection. Look under the steam shaft of the casing, see that it is not there for the purpose. If not, you would conveniently valve setting if there would be a suitable side for the taking in the port opening. Alright, question 308. Pressure at the mud ring. It is more pressure for the mud ring than there is been served at the location of the steam gauge. Some of the people claim that there is steam gauge pressure plus the weight of the water at the mud ring. I claim the pressure is the same. Answer: you are wrong. Some experts in the pressure event evenly in all directions. Therefore, pressure at the mud ring, the greatest is the pressure for the steam, plus the weight of the water upon it. If you had a pail of sand, put the weight of about 10 pounds per square inch at the bottom of the pail, then put the pressure on the top of the sand would not weight and it'd be increased at the bottom of the pail. It is the same with the water if the boiler in the boiler. Alright, question 309, treating the journal bearings. If it is a good practice to put sulfur in the hot journal bearings, would be recommended to bring the driving box down to the bearing after it has been very hot. Yes, use sulfur with the oil, graphite oil, the powder mica. They're also good to assist in lubricating the irritated bearing, getting it down to a smooth surface. If the box would not run cool over the fair trial, the move above the treatment would recommend the wheels be dropped and journals turned and the box board out and then refitted. Alright, question 310. Locomotive broken valve spring. Then testing from the broken valve springs, how could it be located? Well, answer: we presume that they refer to the broken spring with the bevel of the balance of the strip of the pressure of the plate with the steam chest cover that would known as the valve strip below. The springs that hold the strips up to the plate with the relief of the back of the valve with the steam chest of the pressure when they are tight. Any leakage path of the strip will escape at the exhaust passage, though then a hole in the back of the valve. The first indication for the broken spring will be a blow when the throttle is open, and similar to cover the blower to being on. This is covered the steam passing with a strip through the hole in the valve with the exhaust passage nozzle with a stack with determine which side is on. Place the engine on the quarter, open the throttle sufficient to produce the blow, then move the reverser lever with a full forward, full back motion. If the lever can be handled easily, place the other side of the quarter, repeat above the side of the engine, standing on the quarter when the reverse lever is hardest to move, then the side of the spring is broken as the valve with the greatest pressure is holding the seat, cause the lever being harder to handle the engine that is placed on the quarter when testing the each side of the full travel with the valve when the lever is moved with the forward or backward motion. Question 311. Changing eccentric direction motion of the engine. We'll change the eccentric direction motion station engine for the D-slide valve with the handling of the lap of the lead, placing it only one half the way around the shaft from the former position. Change the direction engine the running is or will the engine run at all? Answer: if the engine head of the valve without a lap of the lead eccentric would be set with the angle at 90 degrees, change the position of the eccentric head one half the way around the shaft, would reverse the motion, causing the engine to run opposite with the direction when the lap of the edge of the valve given the lead with the call with the advanced edge of the rule of the eccentric head of the pin angle with the 90 degrees plus the angle of the advance of the rule would hold good if it was desired for the engine run, but either direction would change for the eccentric 180 degrees. The diagram illustrates the effects of changing eccentric with a direct motion. Okay. Degrees should be omitted behind the position where the engine of the was formed center, therefore they would not run at all. See the illustration figure 1 and 2, which show the position valve of the switch eccentrics and the position, but if the eccentric was given the same with the angle advance of the figure 2, with the head of the pin of the seam would admit the head of the position engine would run in the opposite direction from the taking with the eccentric of the valve as shown as our figure 1. Question 312. Broken front tank, wheel, and or axle. What should be done with the case of the broken front tank of the wheel or axle? If you swing them in, is there any danger for the second tire of leaving the track, especially when the engine is running on the curves? Answer: this is like all other breakdowns should be governed the conditions such as the weight of the construction tank, the capacities, etc. of the engines. Will small capacity may often change the entire of the tire of the plate for the side of the piece of the rail placed over the top of the tank of the plate block placed between the frame of the engine with the top of the truck box over the good repair of the wheels, which would support the weight of the wheel while the chains would have the other end of the truck up, preventing the derailment. In some cases, the apron move may be removed. The piece of the rails of the tire placed lengthwise tender of the one end of the resting of the deck and the other bottom of the tank. At the bottom end of the truck, change it to them with 6,000 to 7,000 gallon tank. It is usually better to get some engine to a side track Centering the force of the truck, that can be handled done by sliding wheels with blocking them up, securing them with a notch type, the damaged truck with the wheels frame, the sliding, skidding into the rear run carefully in the case of this kind. Question 313. Broken back tire with an 8-wheel engine. Will you please state how to block up an 8-wheel engine with a broken back tire without blocking over the main box, as the road that will work not allow it to be done? As the road work on will not allow it to be done. We're going to look at the diagram real quick. Alright, this shows the method of filing A with the end driven with the spring with the position of the chain, also indicating the front and the long equalizer that can be cleaned up with the diesel pin. Section shows these showing how to raise the wheel and block of the broken tire of the brass bars engine track with a falcon block with replacing the brass engine brass clat in case for the hot engine truck bearing. Alright, your answer. Run the wheel with a broken tire up on a wedge block with the remove of the cylinder where they insert the block between the axle pedestal bolt with the place for the hole of the broken tire with the wheel center off the rail as the bolt with the block between the drawbar and the tailpiece bolted in with the frame with the so as to relieve the floor with the main boxes as much of the weight as possible inside rod that do not damage with the fire braking, leaving them up when you have done this. For the spring over the main box but not strong enough to carry the weight that has lost its seat. Blocking may have to be used over the main driving boxes engine trucks to keep the pilot high enough to clear the cross planks. In case they should be back on the tire, the right side raising the box would bring the spring in the hanger so high that it would interfere with the reach of the rod, and reversing lever it would be necessary to remove the spring inside from the box with a broken tire on the block at the back end of the equalizer of the frame. Question 314. Axle vibration. To settle the dispute with the police say that the car axle is made with a smaller diameter center of the end of the near of the wheels. Various reasons have been given to one side to be saved with the iron. If so, why is it not the same project will carry it out with the driving the angle engine truck axles? Answer. The reason why the driving engine and the engine truck axles are the same diameter there is the entire length due to the fact that the bearing of the carrying of the load to the inside of the wheels, the uneven joints of the track passed over the wheels, over by the wheels, do not tend to vibrate axles so that there would be the weight of the carried on the bearings outside of the wheel in the case of the truck. Or the trailer axle, with the outside bearings, when the weight of the outside of the wheel passes over an uneven track, the axle being of the small diameter of the center allows the vibration to take place. Allows the vibration to take place from the force of the blowing part of the load of the uneven track. Size article. It was not vibration broken with the journals being the frequent occurrence of unless the track was perfect with the condition it would be possible to do saying it would have been laid with a continuous rail without frogs and switches. Frequent the truck axle with a smaller diameter and same with the same reason the axe hand is not the same side with the full length illustration being convincing the person using the axe. Alright, question 315. Testing the steam pipe joints. I have been told the cover of the exhaust pipe of the jack of this will be testing joint at the base for the exhaust pipe. Please explain how much water reaches the exhaust pipe to give it the pressure there to test for the joint. Answer. There are very few and if any valves and cylinders packed with absolutely watertight. Therefore, in making the test for the one with the ports to the cylinder was opening the mission. The other would be opening the exhaust, and the water under the pressure would find its way past the packing rings and fill the cylinder with water on the exhaust pipe side of the piston. This would allow the water to get in the exhaust passage even though it did not leak under the valve. If the piston valve leaks past the rings of the valve, hence the tight joint at the top of the exhaust tip, it would prevent the water from coming out of the pressure and would be accumulated with the exhaust pipe as well as the steam pipes. If you're fortunate enough to have the valves and cylinders packing that will not leak with the extent moving the lever forward to the back of position which allow the water to get in the exhaust pipe, the test then made with this leak at certainty. Alright, 316, rule. 316, angularity of the main rod. I play for the main of the pin with the top of the quarter, 316, rule. Angularity with the main rod. I played for the main pin with the top quarter of the naked eye. Made a mark on the guide bar, and then I had gave the wheel a half a rotation and placed the pin on the bottom quarter and marked the guide bar. I find that the various almost 2 inches. They have tried this in 18 or 20 engines, and have never found one that would come true. Would you please explain this? Answer. Your eye is not accurate enough to measure the correct. Your system is wrong. The engine on the quarter means the half stroke. This will place your crosshead half stroke marks for the guide. Then move with the engine until the crosshead travels to the end of the stroke back of the marking engine. Then you will get the engine on the top of the bottom of the quarter, then pin the slightly advanced with the perpendicular line through the axle proportional with the length of the main rod. Thus is short main rod will bring further with the front of the line and the long one. Try this way next time. Usually the tram equals the length of the main rod. You cannot miss it. This is caused the angularity of the main rod. Also explains the reason for the circumference of the wheel traveled farther from the rail of the half stroke back to the center to the half stroke again, then the half stroke and the head to the center and the back of the half stroke. Alright, question 317, movement of the crosshead. Will you please explain if the truth of the crosshead moves only one way of the direction? I have heard it and doesn't, but it's not believe it. Answer: in order to make it you believe that we'll make it the drive with the diameter 42 inches for the piston, the 2-foot stroke with the use of the becomes to come out with the even figure for the drive, and prove you with the crosshead always moving in the direction that the engine is going. Multiply the 42 inches by 3.1416 to give it the circumference of the wheel equals to 131.9472 inches. We will call this 132 inches, which divided by the 12 and equals 11 feet. Remember, the stroke of the 2 feet with the circumference of the wheel is 11 foot. With the crosshead of the back center of the measure of the 5 foot 6 inches with the back point of the contact wheel with the rail. Move the wheel distance. The engine that has moved 5 foot and 6 inches. Crosshead moved the engine of 5 foot 6 inches. In addition, with it moved over the guides of the 2 feet, with which gives 7 feet and 6 inches. The crosshead has moved the pin and traveled back to the front center of the wheel. Would not move the head 5 to 6 inches farther. The pin crosshead would again back to the center, both but the crosshead from the loss of the 2 feet with the gain of the forward stroke has only traveled the distance 3 foot 6 inches, but on the 7 foot 6 inches it traveled the forward stroke, the 3 foot 6 inches on the back stroke, and then equal to 11 feet with the circumference of the wheel is going ahead at time. 318. Question: valve travel the lap lead. Will the valve of the engine having the lap of the lead travel with the reverse level and center knots of the quadrant engine the drifting? If they will travel, and why and how much? A valve will always travel twice the lap of twice the port opening, whatever the cutoff may be. Many locomotives have the value of the travel for the greater than twice the lap of the width of the steam port. They never have less. To illustrate the answer for the question, they will take the engine 3 to 5 inch travel and the eccentric of the 5 inch throw, 1 to outside of the apple with the 1 and 32 cents lead opening full gear with the motion, and the 6 inch cutoff of the lead will increase to 3/16 of an inch. Maximum porting opening of 5/16 of an inch would be a valve traveling of the 5 inch of the full gear, but when working with the 6 inch cutoff of the wood only with the travel of the twice the lap of which and 1 inch for the twice the port opening will head cave at the 5/16 of an inch hole travel in this notch of the 2 5/8 of an inch. Therefore, the clear of the valve of the travel twice the lap of the opening with whatever it may be, and lead increase the lever notch up the board with the middle gear. They can easily figure it out with the marks of the valve rod. Does the valve travel because of the motion and part of the link arm of the rocker of the eccentric strap of the rod? When the eccentric rod is in the line with the line link block, nearly so with the eccentric collar and control of the action of the valve, but when linking the ray with the mid gear, the bolts eccentric control of the action valve of the travel to decrease the length of the graze from a full gear with the center of the figure of the back of the motion eccentric coupled with the lower end of the link of the fulcrum, link of the block of the weight and the forward motion eccentric with the power force to move the lever, in which the case of the link of the, if you have the explanation to why the value of the travel, how much in any position in which the reverse lever it may be placed. Alright, question 319. Leaving the back port open in case of the breakdowns. Would it be advisable to practicable in case of the broken eccentric strap, the link of the rocker box or arm to leave the back port open a little and emit the steam and the oil of the cylinder instead of taking down the main rod? Alright, your answer is yes, unless prohibited by the rules of the mechanical department by clamping the device with the position allowing the steam to enter the back port. Steam and the oil with the cylinder, it will not necessarily take down the main rod. The amount of the opening of the port should be left open with the determinant of the opening of the throttle, blocking the cylinder cock open and with remove the valve of the cylinder cock. Some of the rods advocate the taking of the cylinder cock out entirely with blocking the valve of the position of to allow the very reasonable amount of the steam of the escape all the times when the throttle is open. With this, and then in this case, the engine should stop at the center on the good side and close the cylinder cock of the replacing the valve of the cock. Sufficient steam will be emitted to the cylinder. Complete the stroke of the disabled side of the wheel plate for the good side again with on the quarter valve cock of the engine be again removed. Again by being removed and broken down on the side, whether you're in position of starting engine when you're ready to go. With the heavy power impossible to train when crews pinch in the engage engines with off the center of the handle of the rod and succeed with the getting of the strap of the bolts off, and the difficult thing to do. This is practiced sometimes in important life at the present time than conserve the current method. Question 328. Question 320. Cylinder packing the blowing. What does the cylinder packing blowing over the blowing the most at the beginning of the stroke on the eighth or on the quarter? Some kind of the cylinder packing does blow over the most at the beginning of the stroke because the seam that has not been set in out against the cylinder wall until the stroke was commenced. If the cylinder round is cut and scored the same diameter through it, though, the entire length of the guide properly lined to keep the position running with the true in the cylinder of the gross greatest blow with being from the emission line to the point of the stroke where the steam is cut off, then the steam expands volume, the pressure would be reduced to the below. Less the usual practice of the place the engine and quarter half stroke with the lever of the below gear, the test of the packing of the below to the outside of the both sides of the be tested on one time, moving the engine position both sides of the crossheads are opposite of each other with each distance for the back end of the guide's back cylinder of the heads. Place the engine above the packing of the both side of the both ends of the cylinder may be tested in two positions. Question 321. Heat surfacing. When an engine here of the heavy transfer of the work has been given a great deal of the trouble, the fireman about steaming here about the dimensions weight about 160,500 pounds, attractive effort 36,400 pounds, no engine trucks, heating the surface of 1,905 feet, grading area 29 square feet, cylinders of 22 to 28 inches, 22 by 28 inches, drivers 57 inches of the diameter, steam pressure at 180 pounds. She has a 5-inch nozzle and pennycoat pipe. It is very hot at the door and smoke does not fill with the stack, but the strikes the right side and is enough to the heating surface for the cylinders and to the beating surface of the boiler portion of the greater area of the 65.5 square feet per square foot with the great area of the compared with the variable with the average of the boiler's recent construction design with the average of 66 to 83 square feet with a heating surface per square foot with the great. This includes the boiler wide firebox with the design as the boiler and custom allows a certain amount of the heating surfaces to each cubic for the piston displacement. Experiments have determined the number of the square feet heating surface should be from 320 to 415 times with the piston displacement and the cubic feet ordinarily 385 square feet with the heating surface per cubic feet with the position displacement is allowed. Although the most depends on the class of the engine surface, she is designed for the wheelbase for the end using the following formula with the H equals heating surface D equals diameter of the piston in inches, L equals the length of the stroke of the inches, while H equals 0.175 times D squared times L or 2,371 square feet with the heating surface should be allowed with the engine. If you would appear with the sheet was slightly over the cylinder from the heating surface that allow the draft appliance are not properly adjusted to obtain the best results. The stack should be put in line with the exhaust nozzle so that the exhaust steam would be filled with the stack on all sides. The diaphragm should be ready to get the draft through the upper flow thereby reducing the temperature at the fire door. Fireman utilizing the heating of the surface that they do not have. The changing of the diaphragm cannot have the effective tension extension for the nozzle top of the about the 8-10 inches that will bring the top of the tip of the center line, but the boiler will give the better results. Do not get discouraged. Improvement of the boiler design is subject to the interesting and mechanical man or presence. Perhaps the cylinders will be bushed and stream, and remaining of the surfaces will save most of the trouble in the front end if the fluids are clean and cylinders packing the valves are in good condition. Alright, question 322, blocking for a broken engine truck. In the case of the broken engine truck, either forward or back, is necessary to block up the top of the front of the driving wheels. Alright, we're going to actually look at the picture here. This shows showing the way to do the easy broken man driving spring on the underframe engine, and to handle the broken trailer line, broken man equalizers. Alright, we'll flip this to the side again. I didn't notice that. Alright, showing the front method of sliding the broken engine with the end of the truck wheel to the side of the truck, placing the end of the tire on the front trunk wheel, as shown on the rear of the chain with the ties with the top of the tank arranged for the figures 2, 3, and 4 opposite page with the tie placed between the arch bars with oil box removed from the purpose. Figure 2 shows the figure 2, figure 3, and figure 4. The tier laid over the top tanks for the figure 4 2 length will overchange the ties in place in figure 3 with those from the hung chains as in figure 2 pasting around the tie between the arch bars by the oil box improved with them purpose to the slide view with the arrangement shown in figure 1 opposite page. Alright, we'll go over this real quick. The methods of the raising cross evaluation. You see the board here on the 3 ties. Method of raising the block wheel with a broken tire. That's one. Or your answer, it may be necessary to block up the top of the front with the driving block with the run of the front, drive down the wedges to relieve the weight of the engine truck that it can be easily raised with the properly chained with the engine frame. The nodule of the 8-wheel engine is usually necessary to block on the top of the front, drive the wheels, but the 6 and 8 wheel coupled with it as the rules do not require it. It's up to the judgment engineer in all cases the block of the top of the front and with the driving box is necessary to keep the pilot sufficient from high safety passing of the fogs and crossings. Question 323, broken tire. If in case of the broken tire where the tire would be removed, should the wheel with the raise with the clear with the remove the rail, leaving the good oil on the rail would be cramped position injurious for the engine. Answer, if only a 10-wheel engine but the front of the tire was broken, it would run with the broken tire up on a wedge to raise the wheel high enough to allow the settling of the sill, having the tire clear with the rail with the accelerator remove the block of the sufficient thickness for the display for the keep of the tire for the connecting come in contact with the rail when the wheel was running off the wedge. If the rods were not sprung, would proceed with the full train. If the main tire was broken, would block in the same manner. The slack up the side rod, keep at the side of the running of the carefully without training. The terminal with a lack of tire broken would block up the former case of the trying to throw as much weight as possible against the good wheel was used for the wedges between the tank of the engine to assist in keeping the flange good tire close up the rail and running carefully, especially around curves. Having only one wheel enough to do to the tire to clear of the rail nicely will not cramp the box for the injurious and to the engine. And if the side of the driving box were closed on the side of the shoe of the wedge of the driving box would cramp when one wheel to rave the higher than the other. Damage would result with the breaking off of the flange of the drive box and save the flange with the drive box with the braiding out of the count with the rough and uneven and inside with the flange or bevel to the side of the shoe of the wedge fits. Only about 4 inches of the side of the shoe of the wedge is having the bearing of the center of the bevel or the center of the both ends on the sides of the flange. I'll be eighth damage for the cramping of the flange of the driving box with one wheel center and raised slightly higher than the other on one side. Question 324. Broken back driving wheel. What should be done with the broken back driving wheel 8 and 10 and 12 wheel engine? Handling in the same way the broken tire would be taken down the opposite side, each side of the engine. Question 325. Broken go-ahead eccentric strap or blade. In case of the broken go-ahead eccentric strap of the blade, supposed to remove the broken part of the tie at the top of the blink of the lower arm of the tumbling shaft, set the valve of the cover of the pores, tighten the gland, and let little preventing the gland to be loose, not be tight enough to prevent reversing, allow the valve to be removed, handling getting oil to the cylinder. While drifting, would this be practicable? Is the rule to be taken down in eccentrics in the case of this kind because the rule is made general application of tumbling sheet with the linking of the arm above the arm over the top of the link that could be secured near the proper position? It would be safe enough if the lever that was not hooked up or reversed. But in the case of the flag emergency, the engine was reversed. So the further damage was result, it would be safe to take down both eccentrics. However, this should be happen where the engine was not available to train, could not handle the one side. If you could turn the engine on a Y or a table exhaust the train dispatcher to let you turn the engine around, get on your train, back up the terminal, taking the lever in the full brake motion. This will bring the back motion eccentric rod nearly in line with the link block on the disabled side, which would enable the work to be both sides of the engine taking in front of the full train, which would be in credit to you. Such work usually appreciated. Alright, there is actually a couple more pages of this. Alright, what's that? 320, 129, 128, 127. For question 326, compound locomotive. What is the smallest equalizing valve at the end of the main valve of the bulb within the 4-cylinder compound? What does it do? What is it located with the question asked if the locomotive is up to date with the mix shame? The page 347 of the paragraph 1 says that if the small equalizing valve at the end of the mainstream steam valve is broken with the remove the covering broken or removed with the converting of the side of the engine, the high pressure cylinder or pressure engine, the work of the being done with the low pressure cylinder and the high pressure piston would be approximately balanced. I am unable to find anything that looks like an equalizing valve on either end of the would be. Thank you for your explanation. Alright, we are not familiar with the equalizing cylinder type of the Vulcan compound engines and are inclined to think that you should appear with the Baldwin 2-cylinder type refers to the reducing valve. A full description of the construction operation compounds question will be found in the Art of Railroading, published in Rail Publication Society, Chicago. Alright, question 327, throttle valve leaking. What if the throttle valve leak when the boiler is full of boiling water? The valve is perfectly dry with a 200-pound pressure of the warm water. This is due to expansion of the throttle of the box of the manner in which the valve of the ground is set, as well with the construction of the same throttle valve with the small diameter 5 inches for the large diameter 5.5 inches may be grounded even in both seat for the getting tight joint. The water pressure will be perfectly tight with the under the seam pressure, but large valve with the small diameter of 5 3/4 inch for the large diameter of 7.5 inches will usually be better job of the small end of the valve with its ground. The tight joint with the large end of the valve ground is loose fit, and there would be a leak with a slightly under the water pressure. Then, when the boiler under the stream expansion of the valve box will take place, the valve leaking under the water pressure will perfectly tight at 200 pounds boil pressure, temperature of 388 degrees. If the were possible to grind the throttle of the valve to see the temperature, steam, the working pressure, there would be no occasion to meet the allowance expansion of the valve box due to the difference in diameter amount of the metal in the valves. Question 328. Adjusting the cutoff, then running over the cutoff of the engine, I found the carried seam of the to the far on one side of the found necessary to the shortened link of the hanger on the other side. The engine cutoff at the seam of the right side with the 9 inches both ends. For the left side, she cut about 8 inches both ends. I marked the line, blocked them, and raised them 3/4 inch on each. And then again ran over the cutting off the founding of the racing link at 3/4 inch of the inch for the made and 1 3/4 inch the difference for the cutoff. Now I want to know how to use the portion that I can sharpen the hanger, then portion of the 3/4 inch of the inch, and I raised the link so I could get the desired cutoff of the 8 inches on the side. And the answer is so I can get the desired cutoff and 8 inches on the side of the engine. All right, answer. A rule of proportion can be given with the would be accurately, although the obtained approximately comparing the length of the stem with the full gear with the cutoff of the engine of the cutoff of the full gear with the 24 inch of the engine and the 20 inch stroke with the distance of the stems of the length to the point of the opposite of the blade when the pin would fill full gear in 6 inches. Then the 1/4 inch for the length would represent 1 inch for the cross side of the cutoff. The link hanger is not properly length. The difference would be greater than 7 to 8 inches than 15 to 20 inch cutoff. For this mistake, shortening the hanger 3/4 inch for the obtaining the 1 inch of the less than cut off of 3/16 of an inch would possibly have made it all about right. A sure method of asserting the current method out with the shortening of the hanger would be the placement of the crosshead at 8 inches of the desired point with the cutoff of the side, then marking the link next, raising the lower link, and then the case of the maybe with the remove of the reverse the level until the point of the mark of the valve rod stem, causing them to tram to marking the link against the point with the difference between the two marks of the link would amount with the link hanger should be changed. Question 329. Cylinder packing rings. How much larger would the diameter of the cylinder packing ring be than the cylinder before the ring is cut so that it will be pressed out against the cylinder wall, thus preventing the leak? Answer. Up to 12 inches in diameter, 1/16 is considered sufficient. If from the 12 to 20 inch diameter, 1/4 to 5/16 of an inch in general practice, although some roads have the standard ring of the one end half inch larger than outside the diameter of the ring of the cylinder for all classes of the engines. Question 330. Steam chest joints. How much should they be allowed to draw down with the clearance between the pressure plate with the valve of the new olden joints and steam chest with the line balance valves? Answer. For the round gasket is used to make the type of the joint. The steam chest 1/16 of an inch should be allowed to draw down to cover the tightening of the nuts for the sides of the flat copper. The upper gasket is used to customary to allow the draft. It would be usually be very slightly the space of the clearance between the back of the valve and the bottom of the pressure plate with the maybe 1/16 of an inch, 1/8 of an inch should be not less than in order the valve may be lifted excessive compression take place, where it is not relieved by the time the valve with lifting from the seat would possibly rupture the cylinder head. Alright, question 331. Decrease in lead. If the engine is turned out with a shop new with its general repairs with valve set with a 1/16 of an inch after the 6 month service will lead and decrease the remain same. And when the engine is new and the has received general repair for loss of motion should be taken out, but the valve gear must depend on the design of the engine, reserve the engine. And while the surface is aware of the eccentric shaft of the line block with the eccentric valve of the rods, pins, and rocker boxes etc. will occur with the cover of the engine lows to lose lead given with the valve of the parts of the wood ground the good working fit, but therefore the engine will lose the lead proportion of the wear of the valve gear. Or question 332. Inside the outside emission valves. Why have compound engines got inside emission valves on one side and outside emission valves on the other? Whether the method is employed special reason the better design steam distribution as well as to obtain suitable steam passage in cylinder saddles. Question 333. Offset rocker arms. Why are the rocker arms offset with the sum of the engines? The dome is done as equal part opening of each of the ends. The center of the whole of the lower rocker arm, the straight line with the center of the axle, the top of the upper rocker arm, the plumb there. There is no offset with the rocker arm, but there is the center hole of the lower rocker arm as below the line is given off the set with the bringing of the right angle to the center line line with the motion with the right angle of the line drawn with the center of the axle through the center of the whole lower rocker arm, the top of the rocker of the plumb. This is question 334. Length of the rocker arm. Why are there rocker arms on one side of the engine longer than the other? And I think that refers to the compound engines. Alright, your answer. When the rocker arms are equal to the length of the travel of the valve, equal through the eccentric. When the travel of the valve is greater through the eccentric, the increase the length of the top of the arm of the rocker, it is necessary to give the valve of one side of the compound locomotive the greater the travel than the other. The easiest way to tighten the length of the rocker on the say desired amount. Question 335. Lubricated chain within the locomotive stationary engine. Will you kindly explain why the pin side of the Michigan lubricator would not work on the stationary engine? Would be satisfactory on the locomotive. Made the following test. We attached the lubricator with about 3¼ inch pipe to a 3-inch steam pipe with the boiler pressure of 70 pounds. The engine worked all right, but under no circumstances under the lubricator feed. We tested the locomotive, it worked fine. Answer. Temperature and condition was no doubt responsible for the failure of the lubricator to work on the stationary engine. It was applied with the locomotive. You have the higher steam pressure for the difference of the pressure of the pipe where you made the steam connection to the delivery pipe at the higher temperature. When you have the lubricator on the steam pipe at the stationary with the pressure on the lower to 3¼ inch pipe with the connecting the lubricator, no doubt with the filled with water pressure being equal to delivery and with the piping connection do not produce the current pressure in the temperature of the oil was so low that the congealed wood be not feed through the nipple to get a circulation of the steam through the pipe of the warm oil lubricator to hold the pail of hot water of the lubricator with the immersed into it, and you will very likely get started all right. Question 336. Direct indirect valve gear. Can you give me a definition of the direct indirect valve gear? What engine would have the eccentrics on the front axle on which the main pins have an idea that this is only indirect engine? And am I right? No, not quite. Valve gear is designed with the valve removed the opposite direction of the eccentric rod is said to be the indirect motion with the valve the rods to travel the same direction eccentric rod of the engine and said to be direct. Usually accomplished with the use of the rocker bolt the length arm of the valve arm pointing to either down or up. The Art of the Railroading Publishing Railway Publication Society Security Building Chicago fully explains this in detail. Alright, 337. Blocking linking with a broken reverse lever of the breech rod. This claim of the opening one link of the block for the top of the line block, and so that is in case of the broken reverse lever of the breech rod. According to the examination, we answered the block of both links on the top of the bottom. Now, a friend of mine claimed that the chunk of the waste on the top of the one of the line block would run about 40 to 50 miles. Place and see where. Please say which of the use of the correction. I claim would it be impossible to run any distance with a link blocked in this way. Blocking on the top of the one link block is required and cut off the quickest and bestest. And the answer the purpose of in the case of necessary to reverse the engine, all you'd have to do is change the long block from the short one if you are ready to back up. If you block the top of the bottom of the top and bottom of the both links, you have the blocks. You have the block chain, but then you remove the block without allowing the space. The slipping the link of the block might result with further damage, such as spring light, link hanger, and broken side panel. The chunk of the waste for the answer for the emergency. This would give it the full stroke of which may be necessary and not be necessary. Care should always be taken to see that the sufficient blocking the wood waste with anything that else is handy. To keep the top of the link from striking the link of the block, the shrink of the block of the increasing the travel of the valve beyond the clearance of the limited steam check the valve yoke and the moat make the valve rod rocker eccentric blade. Alright, question 338. Locating the valve with a broken balance strip of the spring. What is the best method of locating the valve with the balance string with a broken in the engine with a single nozzle with no drip pores drilled into the exhaust past the cylinder saddle? Why should the single spring strip broken cover the valve handle with much harder than the ordinary slide valve without the balance feature requires so much more oil than not handled easily? If we break the spring of the strip of these small engines, it will seem the engine would break something before getting the engine terminal. Answer: to locate this side of the strip of the spring of the broken engine for the above the described place the engine with the quarter open throttle will give the engine steam enough to produce the good blow of the cylinder cocks. Then close the cylinder cocks, move the lever of the flow gear forward or full gear backward motion. This will give the full travel of the valve on the side of this. Move the if it moves easy, you will know that the side is all right and the valve has its usual balance. Then place the engine with the quarter on the other side to repeat the operation. If the lever is harder to move the forward, back, and the throttle open, same with the be made safely. Report the valve with the hardest move of the lever with the side of the quarter of or a half stroke. Another method is getting out the running of the board when the engine is running slow, working slow to have and take hold of the valve rod. You can easily determine which of the one has been broken strip of the spring. The reason for the valve with the broken spring air strip requires more oil due to the oil being blown off of the chest, past the defective strip through the hole of the back of the valve with the exhaust cavity instead of going through the valve seat, lubricating in the face of the valve. The cause of the valve will see the black become dry and increase the resistance back, makes the lever handle the hard with the broken strip of the steam chest and pressure, the exerting the downward pressure on the back of the valve to increase the resistance when the strap to the rate with the protect the enclosed of the air with the back strip of the valve with the presence of the make but when they are defective the air with the back of the valve enclosed with the trip and exposed with the exposure of the without relief of the amount with the steam escapes the hole of the back and the back of the valve. This amount with the steam causes the blow similar to the steam through the blower and the noticeable through the throttles open. If you can get the surface of the valve and seat with the lubricated with the broken strip as well as when you get the plain side of the valve lubricated with the valve with the broken strip of the same, the air of the pressure would not handle the harder than plain slide valve. Our question 339, freezing injector delivery pipe. Explain how the water in the delivery pipe can be protected from freezing. Answer, by even the heater heating the steam valve slightly open with the overflow of the closed steam, the flow of the back of the tenor of the feed pipe at the same time forward of the branch pipe. The heater cock should be open the drain and condense in the steam water of the delivery pipe, otherwise will fill the water and freeze the steam. The valve should not be open so far to cause the water to become overheated in the tender, preventing the injector from working, damaging paint. Alright, your index to questions, and then you have tables, equations, and general index. And then it shows the modern locomotive engineering with questions, answers, sells different books here. Like modern wiring diagrams, practical mechanical machine drawing, design self-taught, practical gas engine handbook, stationary marine, portable gas, steam boilers, air brake practices, engineers and electrical, modern wiring, machine shop practices. Thank you for watching. This book was once again Locomotive Engine Breakdowns and How to Repair Them when Question and Answers Illustrated Steam Engines, 1907, Wallace.